sharing with us directly. It's unbeatable. And on that note, we have a super special session. We mentioned this earlier to you today, and now we're really pleased that we're able to tee this up. This event here at Expand North Star really is unique. How many other conferences or events around the world have entrepreneurs that gather on the same stage from across the world, across, in fact, 7 continents? And I would say this stage here is unique for that. From polar explorer to entrepreneur is a very intriguing title session. I'm not going to detract from anything more from the gentleman who's going to grace the stage, because I really want him to extrapolate his journey with you. All I've got to say is that please put your hands together for Patrick Woodhead, who's a co-founder and CEO, White Desert, Antarctica, for a fantastic journey over the next 20 minutes where he's actually been an adventurer around the world. Please do give a very warm welcome to Patrick.
Hello, everybody. How's that? Hello, hello. So welcome, and it seems about as incongruous as could possibly get to be talking at a tech conference about Antarctica, which is a place where we have no internet, in 35 degrees heat, where I'm used to minus 35 degrees. So it feels extremely weird to be here, but very, very welcome. It's my first time in the UAE. So I wanted to share you a little story about how White Desert was founded, where we started, what we do, and yeah, some lessons of being an entrepreneur, I guess. So Antarctica and the 7th continent. I don't know how many people know much about it. It's a desert like it is here, except our desert is the highest, driest, windiest continent on Earth. So the lowest recorded temperature is minus 89 degrees, 0.6 centigrade in winter. We operate in the summer, but it's also one of the most phenomenally beautiful places you'll ever see. Now, my journey in this started 20 years ago. So I'm 47 now, and I left university and basically started exploring. So for 8 years, I went to these really remote locations. I was in the Congo, Kyrgyzstan, Tibet, Suriname, and the Amazon, and basically trying to go to anywhere that wasn't explored. That was the vibe. And that led on to thinking, well, maybe there's another place that's not explored, and that's Antarctica, because there's so much wilderness there you cannot believe. And back in 2002, we broke the world record for skiing to the South Pole. So we're the fastest and youngest team to ever reach the South Pole. I came back with all my toes. I weirdly kind of enjoyed it and thought, we'll come back and do a full traverse of the continent. So this is something that 11 people had ever done. It was a journey of 2,000 kilometers that we're going to do in 80 days. And probably the most scary thing of all is that we only had 2 changes of underwear for the entire time. So this was Antarctica, and this is where I really got to see the deep field, the interior, and it was just staggeringly beautiful. Even on days like this where we had huge whiteouts, couldn't see a thing, we used to call these plane days because after all that effort and all that strain, if a plane landed next to you, would you get on the plane and just get the hell out of there? That was the sort of moral dilemma we'd put to ourselves. But the time was in the tents. And in the tents we were there, we thought, why is it only polar explorers and the odd scientist that gets to see the interior of Antarctica? And this is a question that I thought needed to be remedied. So I found this Russian outfit flying out of Cape Town, and they flew into Antarctica, basically, as you would describe, from the top of the map, from Cape Town, South Africa. Now, in those days, it was anything but luxury. So this is an Aleutian 76 aircraft. You can see the interior. There's a portaloo strapped to the back of it. The unknown international airport was kind of my favorite. And I basically financed 3 tents on the back of my credit card like an absolute idiot. Worst ever business plan ever devised. And thought, hey, I'll put some tents out. I'll build a little camp. Maybe somebody will come. Kind of not really thinking I was even in tourism. Then that's Paul, who's one of my guys I crossed Antarctica with, literally looking at me going like, this is never going to work. So there are my tents, very, very proud of them. And over the years that followed, about 2-3 years after this, we just started borrowing a little bit more money, doing a little bit more, and building a bit more of the camp. But it was the Wild West. I mean, we were driving around in old Soviet tanks. The chef, you can see there, was so happy to see women because he's just overwintered and been in the cold for 10 months. So he was like trying to give them fruit and chocolates and everything else he could find. And this was our vibe. It was like proper Wild West. And I decided to build a little camp. We had some tents. It was safari style, and off we went. And this is us doing the first attempt at what we called luxury Antarctica with General Chef, all power had gone, so she's trying to heat up the creme brulee with a blowtorch. And this is my ex-wife and friend James doing a marketing shot for how wonderful and comfortable Antarctica could be. So I always think that a company is kind of like a company is basically like a sort of child. I don't know why adolescence has been split up, but it starts off as a toddler where your company is incredibly fragile. A little stiff breeze can push over your company. Then you become an adolescent, teenager, grown up and leave. And I think that White Desert is about 20 years old now. So kind of we feel like we're just sort of becoming a man or into adulthood. But this is our first one. Polar exploration is at once the cleanest and most isolated way of having a bad time ever devised. And I think staying at our camps in those early years was about the most bad time ever devised. Like, people slept in sleeping bags. We had these sort of slightly shell-shocked tourists that would come. They'd be like, oh my goodness, is this really what we've got? But the nice thing was Antarctica itself. The surrounding activities that we could access were absolutely beautiful. We had crystal caves. We had these amazing ice tunnels. These are formed from meltwater and really are this blue. They're absolutely beautiful. You had the Blue River, the shot you saw at the beginning. And also, one of my favorite things is the mountains nearby, but then the penguin colonies. So just near to us, we had a penguin colony of 28,000 penguins. The chicks are so young when we access them, they're even sitting on their parents' feet. And this whole story, if you've ever seen March of the Penguins, is one of the most phenomenal, phenomenal stories. And the penguins are something that, to go to Antarctica and to see these animals actually in the wild, is like one of those great wilderness experiences like the migration of the wildebeest or something similar. So the penguins are definitely my favorite. But also, aside from them, actually this is a shot we call Bow to My Emperor, Bow to Your Emperor even. The other thing aside from the penguins was also going to the South Pole. So seals, penguins, and then the other thing that people really wanted to do was to get to the lowest point on Earth. So even now, 2023, getting to 90 degrees south, getting to the lowest point on our planet is incredibly difficult. It's a 7-hour flight from where we are in Antarctica just to get to the refueling stop to then get to the South Pole. So I mean, Captain Scott and Shackleton, they had it tough. It's still not an easy place to get to. And in fact, at this camp here, your nearest neighbor is the International Space Station flying 400 kilometers above your heads. So we definitely think we've got the award for the most remote. So the South Pole, here it is. Now this is a place where there's no more east, south, or west. The only direction on the planet is north. You can walk around the planet in a couple of paces. And yeah, it's an incredibly difficult and rare place to get to. And here's me falling off the planet. So by this stage, the whole Russian plane, the whole partnership with them was starting to dissolve. And I call this now the teenage years, because we were definitely trying to then branch off on ourselves and form our own plans. And what we were looking for was basically independence. And I'd heard rumors, these whispers, of a runway that used to exist 20 years ago, somewhere in the wilderness. So I took a plane and started flying off looking for what could be a runway site. And I found this raw patch of ice. Now I know a runway, there's plenty of them in the world, and it all says, well, it's a runway, right? But this is an ice runway. And there's only 11 of them on the planet, and they're all owned by big major governments. And this was going to be the first one that was actually owned privately, or as a commercial runway. So we found this one site, and 3 years later, basically landed the first ever Gulfstream to come into Antarctica. So the Gulfstream was a major step in the right direction. No longer Russian Ilyushin cargo plane, toilet seats in the back of the plane. This was now real luxury. But if you recall, the camps weren't exactly amazing five-star resorts like you have here in Dubai. So the next step was really to improve the camps. And this is where I think that we became moving now well and firmly into our sort of adult life, as we were now setting up our camps and accessing by Gulfstream. Now we could really genuinely call ourselves a luxury experience. And we also very much needed to take control of all our logistics. So from being 5 people that were in that little tent trying to look after the people, we now have 140 people that work for us in Antarctica. So we do more flying than anyone but the US government in Antarctica. We have 5 different aircraft. And suddenly this has become an entire thing. So we now take about 250 scientists to their research stations. We take about 250 tourists a year into the interior of Antarctica. And we now have these 3 different camps. So Wichita, which is our first camp, and Wichita is kind of so-called Wichita because when I first went there I got lost and didn't know which way to go. And this is our kind of early explorer camp. And then we've got Echo Camp, which is where basically I was in this explorer camp and we had Buzz Aldrin come and stay. And Buzz Aldrin, the astronaut, said, geez, this place looks just like the surface of the moon. I thought, that's a good idea. Let's make a camp that looks like just like it's on a lunar sort of outpost. So we built Echo last year. And from where we evolved, I'm just going to show you now a short video of what White Desert has evolved into. So here we go. So that's what the guests see, and it's, as you can hopefully tell from the video, just a really magical place to exist in. But the brief for this was how to build a business in Antarctica, and what we have is obviously a tourism camp and a tourism setup, but behind that is all the logistics. And I mentioned earlier 140 people that work for us in Antarctica from 18 different nationalities, and they work in 24-hour sunlight, 7 days a week, and it's the people that run all of this. It's the people that operate for 4 months non-stop to make White Desert happen. And I wanted to just do a little bit of a behind the scenes on how White Desert operates, because to give you some stats, a can of Coca-Cola costs us about 60 cents in Cape Town. By the time it gets to our camp in Antarctica, it's $38.6 per can of Coke. A barrel of Jet A1 fuel in Cape Town is $100. At that Camp Dixie that I showed you, the most remote camp on Earth, each barrel of fuel is $5,500 a barrel. So everything just goes absolutely crazy in terms of the cost base. And so having the tightest logistics, which actually sort of operates a bit more like a mechanized infantry, is what we've really got in Antarctica. So I'm going to just show you briefly one last video. And this is one of my favorite quotes: "I'm a dreamer with a head for logistics," because I think that kind of sums up any kind of operation in Antarctica. So here we are. Here's our map. We're flying out of Cape Town. And then I'm going to just end by showing a 3-minute movie about how it's all put together. Thank you.